Red Dead Redemption 2. It is one of the biggest games that everyone has been talking about for the past couple of weeks because it's from Rockstar and the first one is in everyone's list of best game ever. I've been playing it for quite some time now and there are definitely a lot of things to be impressed here, especially the immersion. This is perhaps one of the most immersive games that I've played in quite a while. The level of immersion here is breathtaking. Anyway, with the release of Red Dead Redemption 2, people have been asking me to talk about the hot takes that come out of it, one of which is this recent article.
Red Dead Redemption 2's puppet-like NPCs make its world feel less real.
It's an article from Kotaku talking about how NPCs in the game feels like puppets and not actual people. Thank you, writer, for subjecting us to this astounding revelation. I have a good idea for your next article, writer. I'm not sure if this is confirmed yet, but I heard that pressing the right trigger button actually lets you to shoot your guns. I don't know, writer. Can someone please confirm this? Now, I've been playing this game for about 4 to 5 hours now, and I managed to get a 12% completion, so this game does have a lot of content, but I don't know how long the writer has played this game. Nothing to be concerned about. The writer has certain ideas about the NPCs of Red Dead Redemption 2, and you guys really want me to talk about this, so why not? Let's talk about it.
Red Dead Redemption 2's excessively detailed world tries to suggest reality. Fall and you get covered in mud. While covered in mud, someone might make a coy comment about how they hope it's not crap.
That's exactly why I love Red Dead Redemption 2. It's the little details that really add up to the immersion of the game. I might say that the game is a bit too immersive.
Yeah!
Just borrowing it.
A few moments later.
Am I glad to see you? Here's your horseback, friend.
Oh, you really were just borrowing it.
Appreciate it.
It's close enough that the game really feels like you're on the Wild West, but the level of immersion does hamper the convenience of the gameplay somewhat. Anyway, carry on, writer.
The world is full of little flourishes and behaviors that suggest its NPCs are real people with genuine reactions, but the more I play, the more they feel like puppets putting on a show.
Here's the thing about NPCs, writer. They are technically speaking puppets, or in more accurate computing terms, artificial intelligence, being programmed by the programmers to give players the illusion of reality presented in the game. And yes, sometimes, actually most of the times, NPCs act in a way that totally breaks the illusion, because their behaviors are only limited to the behavior trees that the programmers gave to them. Programming NPCs, or AIs that simulate human consciousness and respond to a seemingly infinite number of inputs, are going to be very taxing for your processors, especially when you have to render hundreds of them on screen.
On the surface, NPCs aspire to the same level of detail, acting out what seems to be full lives. An angry saloon goer tosses someone through the window for sleeping with his wife. A clumsy rider stops to calm their horse only to get kicked in the head. These moments try to suggest the world is full of people going about their lives, but when contrasted with the rest of the game's level of detail, they are woefully artificial. The seams start to show, and it's obvious that Red Dead Redemption 2's people only exist in relation to me and are defined solely by what I can do to them.
Now, this is actually a valid criticism to a lot of video games these days. One thing I notice quite a lot when playing open world games like any of the Bethesda RPGs, for example, is that the NPCs always stick to their schedules. It's quite rare, if ever, that we see NPCs build friendships with each other, go on dates, get married, etc. And when I say that, I mean the NPCs themselves decide to get married through some sort of a self-learning or a complex decision-making algorithm and not a contrived scripted event that the programmers put in a game. Now, this is not to say that it can't be simulated to look that way. The Sims managed to accomplish this, or at least The Sims 3 when modded as far as I know, and what I mean by that is that the game is capable of having Sims that can actually build relationships with other Sims, become friends with other Sims, marry, or even get certain jobs by themselves, and even then, they still feel so artificial. There are two reasons why this is the case. One, like I said before, this would require a gigantic number of calculations. Attempting to simulate autonomy and free will is a behemoth of a task, even for the best CPUs to date. If you really do want NPCs that have autonomy, their own thoughts and feelings, and you want to have hundreds of them being rendered in real time, it would probably require many of the best CPUs to date being put in a freaking Arctic. You'll be running this game like the last half of Summer Wars. And two, if you program NPCs that can change the fate of the world just like the player, it will break a lot of the game's narrative. NPCs always stay to their own, and a lot of the things that happen in the game will happen thanks to the player's actions instead of what the NPCs do. Sure, it's not really that immersive to have the world to solely revolve around the player, but that's the risk of trying to have a focus point of view in an open world RPG game. Things will just revolve around the player, and the player will seemingly be the one who decides the fate of the world. Is this bad game design? No, it's just an unfortunate set of limitations to how far video games can go in terms of immersing the players to the game's world. We can't truly create the real intelligence in a video game, or at least not now. We have to simulate them to give players the illusion of a real intelligence, hence why we have the term artificial intelligence. Maybe in the future, if we can have more powerful processors and more advanced programming algorithms that can truly simulate autonomy, but for now, we're just gonna have one that tries to be authentic, less immersive to the players, but hey, less processing powers for your already hard-working CPUs. Now that, my friend, would have been a good critique, and it does invite a very interesting discussion regarding video game immersion and how far we can truly go in terms of creating an immersive experience. But here's the problem. What I discussed was not the reason why the writer complained.
The game's interactions are constrained due to its inspirations. Westerns are a complex and problematic genre tied to a violent history that gave rise to the myth of the gun as an egalitarian tool, e.g. the often-quoted God made man, Sam Cold made them equal, and rugged, self-reliant masculinity.
No, writer, the game's interactions are constrained because NPCs in the game do not have free will, and they cannot have free will because that would be an incredibly exhausting programming task for both the programmers and the CPUs. I don't understand how you can make such a leap. You start off with a good critique, which is that many of the game's events seemingly revolve around the player instead of the world evolving within itself, but your reasoning is because the politics are problematic and outdated?
As a result, interactions with Red Dead Redemption 2's NPCs exist within that masculine framework. Arthur and the player's actions are expressions of a mythic masculinity. We rescue women and lesser men, after all. Better men would be able to fight off bandits and manage their horses, and compete against would-be gunslingers while using unique abilities like Deadeye to our advantage.
You do realize that the game takes place in the Wild West in the late 1800s. The gender politics in there are obviously not gonna be progressive, and even if the gender politics are progressive, it wouldn't change the fact that the NPCs in the game are pre-programmed and scripted to follow certain inputs and parameters set by the developers. The difference is that they're just progressive. Just being progressive shows no difference to the structure of the previous NPC setting. Am I saying that progressives are NPCs? Actually, I'm kind of saying that.
The game rewards those masculine impulses. The Western framework leads to only certain kinds of interactions, and those interactions inevitably lead to rewards. Outshoot someone in marksmanship contest and you'll gain some cash. Rescue a man from wolves and he'll give you a treasure map.
Yes, that's just the harsh reality of the Wild West. You have to be good at something in order to get good things, and that includes robbery as well. I don't see your criticism here, writer. You are complaining that the Wild West is the Wild West. Please elaborate further.
These rewards further stress that, in spite of Red Dead Redemption 2's meticulous details and animations, the NPCs just exist for the player's benefit.
Again, yes, that's how every video game is programmed. They're there to serve the players. The writer then referenced Westworld and used it as a comparison. The comparison is so off the mark that it's best for you to just listen to this.
HBO's Westworld, whose core conceit is that people can attend a theme park of Wild West role-playing android hosts who offer unique adventures, mocks this conceit in a scene in which one of the park's artificial workers fall off his horse. When a human protagonist, William, comes to his aid, the host tries to entice him with tales of a treasure map and lost riches. William's companion dismisses the prospective adventure as a transparent park narrative. It's kiddie stuff, a blatant attempt to pull the park guests to side activities and storylines crafted for their amusement.
Wow. That just shows to me that the writer does not understand Westworld and does not understand how video games work in general. How can you compare pre-programmed NPCs inside a video game to androids or hosts that are capable of achieving sentience? Last time I checked, video game NPCs do not have free will, they do not have conscience, and they're not starting a freaking uprising.
And yet, in Red Dead Redemption 2, these scenarios play out with little irony. The game's details are meant to evoke wonder, and these NPC interactions seem meant to suggest to a bigger world full of secrets and adventures, but those adventures are constrained, always coming back to rewarding the player.
This writer clearly doesn't understand how video games work. It seems to me that the writer's ideal video game world is one where the NPCs are capable of sentient thoughts, which again is incredibly difficult to pull off with even the most advanced processors to date. Not only that, but you're gonna have to record like an infinite number of possibilities and lines, which is just downright impossible. The reason why Westworld works is because the hosts are capable of responding to inputs and understanding human language. They can understand humor, they can understand context, they can understand jokes and sarcasm. No video game NPCs to date are capable of understanding those things by themselves. They have to be programmed to respond to certain specific dialogue inputs, which is why we have dialogue options instead of us writing our own dialogues. Come to think of it, considering that NPCs are incapable of distinguishing language, context, and figures of speech, I guess that's another good reason why people call progressive NPCs. The writer then talked about how a good deed that she did towards a random NPC caused her to be rewarded with guns of her own choice later in the game. This should have actually excited the writer because it highlights how impressive the choice and consequences are in the game, but nope.
This encounter meant to give my actions consequences, but the reward and the scripted nature of our interaction rang false. For all of Red Dead Redemption 2's attention to detail, this NPC wasn't an entity who existed before I found him. He was spawned as I came near, solely to be rescued by me, and then again to reward me for it.
I should have seen it coming. I should have read the signs.
Congratulations, writer. You exposed the magic trick in video games. I bow down to your magnificent revelation.
Red Dead's characters are always leading you somewhere, instead of just being people. Enemies are magically summoned for me to gun down. I've watched them blip into existence on my radar during certain events. NPCs exist in orbit of the player for the player.
Again, this criticism applies to pretty much every video game ever, and the reason why we are unable to achieve true sentience with video game NPCs is because it's incredibly difficult to program one that would actually be authentic and would require a significant amount of processing power that would easily trump even the best consumer CPUs in the market. I've repeated myself many times today because you're repeating the same arguments like a freaking NPC, so I think I should just play this clip instead.
Come on now, don't get angry. Don't get angry. It's just a stupid NPC.
As a result, Red Dead Redemption 2's open world often captures the beauty and detail of real spaces, but it never emulates a functioning society. How can it when these people exist to serve me, and when I can decide to kill them with the single press of a button?
Again, writer, you cannot create a truly functioning society with dynamic NPCs that actually do stuff in their lives without risking processing powers and more complex programming algorithms. The Sims managed to be close enough, but it still feels artificial. They are characters with personalities on paper, sure, but they still act like puppets or chess pieces within the world. A true sentient AIs would be those that can respond to natural human dialogues easily and accurately, like the hosts in Westworld, but there are no AIs in video games that are capable of achieving something that's sentient. The reason is, again, achieving true sentience in NPCs is near to impossible with the current processing and programming limitations that we have.
I avoid towns more often than not in the game. I get too distracted by the animatronic people and their play-acting lives. Perhaps I've been playing games so long that I can't help but see the puppeteer strings.
Actually, writer, that's a good comparison, which actually works against your point because this entire article is basically you saying these characters in this puppet show are puppets on strings. One, duh. Two, their purpose is to represent the characters in the story and not to be actual human beings. And three, duh. It constantly amazes me that Kotaku still considers itself a gaming website, but they hire someone who clearly doesn't understand how video games work. The writer also admits that she cannot enjoy the game because she knows how the magic works and it just takes her out of the experience. Here's a little bit of breaking news, writer. I have experience in not only video games, but also programming. I know the magic tricks involved in them. Just because you know how the trick works doesn't mean that you can't always enjoy it. At this moment, you're practically trying to ruin the fun in video games by exposing the obvious tricks that the game developers use. It's the equivalent of going to the films and shout green screen every 5 seconds, or coming into film saying, oh my god, that guy isn't actually Batman, he's just an actor playing Batman. Come on, writer, at least let people enjoy their seemingly realistic but not really that realistic video games, will you?
I definitely don't think that's always the case, but I also don't think players are completely necessary for games to exist either.
Come on now, don't get angry. Don't get angry. It's just a stupid NPC.